So today we're here at Aquarium Co-op with Corey. I honestly cannot believe I'm actually here.
I haven't been here in like 4 years. It's not true. I was here last week, but
I've watched Corey's videos since I was a little kid. He is a massive part of why I'm doing YouTube, why I started keeping fish, breeding fish. A lot of the early videos and nostalgia for me, your videos. So this shop is so special to me. I don't think you understand that because
is it smaller than you thought?
It definitely is, but
yeah, that's what everyone says.
If you look at my tanks at my store, I modeled pretty much everything off of what you did. You know, the wood stands, black backgrounds, as much as I could because I knew that you'd done it and I wanted to make the fewest mistakes possible. You've helped a lot of people get into it. Like I even had a guy message me from Australia when he saw that I was coming. He says, make sure to tell Corey, like, he said something about selling plants and like, why is no one breeding plants? And he's gotten started because of you. So like, yeah,
nice.
You've been a huge inspiration to me. But yeah, we were just talking, we came into the shop and I remember there was like one of your original videos over here.
Yep.
And you were like, I remember watching this because I was like kind of in the same position where like you're spending way too much money on something you can't afford that you don't know is going to work. Mm-hmm. And it was this video and you're sitting like here and you're like, the tanks aren't set up. It was like, you must have been working overtime trying to get the...
We were, and I remember at the time, the permits, they didn't know what we were trying to do with the auto water change system. So that's why I had this crazy dorky water change thing that has to sit above the tank.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know what to do. They're like, it just can't be close to the water. We need an air gap. And I had to come up with that after I set it up. I'm like, what do you mean an air gap? Like in a fish room, you don't run an air gap. But they were terrified that the water would siphon back into the drinking water and contaminate everybody.
Yeah.
And so they made me build this whole wall and everything. And they said, well, if it's good, we'll approve it. If it's not, you'll have to fix it or tear it down. And it was like, but there's only so much money. Like, I don't know if I have the money to fix it and tear it down. So,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
I really only have one shot. Luckily, they liked what they saw, and there was minimal changes, but it's a scary thing when they're like, well, how about you just, you do it, and put all the money you've got into it, and then we'll let you know if we're going to let you do it. And that's not a place you want to be. And so, probably one of those videos, I'm just sitting here just like...
Yeah, you were. It was like one of your first ones.
Yeah, because I was having trouble with the water change system, and I just knew there was these logistical challenges of like, how do I satisfy, like even when it came to the drain, they were very particular to the drain. I couldn't plumb it together. There had to be an air gap there. So air gap here, air gap there, double air gap. And there was no one to copy at that time. There wasn't, you know, like they were like, well, is it like a salon drain? Is it like a, you know, like before we moved in, this was a cleaning company, like a maid service, and they had like a bunch of washers and dryers in the back and drainage for that. And they kept trying to go like, well, what you're trying to do, is it like this? And I'm like, no. And at the time, I was kind of like, I haven't seen anybody else do it. Like, I'm sure there have been other people that had gotten some automatic water changes to happen at their stores, but there wasn't a video or something that I could show the city planners that would be like, I'm doing this. And so no one wanted to sign off on it. And luckily, once I built it, they were just like, wow, it looks really nice. And I also, they were kind of profiling me. I was only a 30-year-old guy that didn't look like he was probably going to fit the model of Edmonds. Edmonds is a very upscale place.
Yeah.
And, you know, viewers will know, like, there's fish stores that, like, kind of smells bad and looks terrible and all of that. And then there's like, oh, there's real wood. And I did all the, you know, natural carved, sustainable wood everywhere.
I took like a ton of inspiration from that. Just like the natural wood look with the black. That was a big thing.
I based mine off a store in like Sweden.
Yeah.
And it was a saltwater store. And I was just like, yeah, but all the wood tones and just like, I like it, but freshwater version. Like and they barely had any tanks. It was much more artistic style, but I was like, I love the warm wood look though. And so, you know, even though we had no budget, so like these are just normal 2x4s.
Yeah.
That you sand until your hands bleed, and then you're like, yeah, and you stain them and you clear coat them and and you do all of that, and now you can make, well, now, you know, now it's like a $7 2x4, but it was a $1.50 2x4, looked pretty good. And so we took that scrappiness to build the store, and so much of it was like I'm trying to think of stuff in like this right here. Like I remember when we built this rack, we like the wood is reclaimed, but the metal here, it was during Hurricane Katrina, and they would only sell me like 2 10-foot sticks each day. So I had to go back every day to the steel yard to get more because we built our stands, these metal stands off of it too. And it was like the saga just to even be able to buy it. Like not only was it too expensive, but you couldn't buy, like there was a shortage on it because it was all going to rebuild the homes. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of got a fish store to run. And so we ended up, while doing all this kind of stuff, this was a rack in the back.
I remember you saying that in the video, yeah.
And you see like this L channel stuff. This we got out of a parking lot, like this metal pole that we cut in half. This over here is the underside of a bed. Like you'd put your bed, this is where the wheel goes. And we're like, yeah, we can weld this up and this can hold the CO2 tank.
I call it's bubblegum and string.
Yeah, and it was just like, metal was expensive, I was running out of money, and it was like, yeah, but why not use this? I guess we will. And so there's a lot of those aspects where now we build different because it's like, well, we can afford to buy the metal piece, and there's not necessarily, like during COVID it was kind of a pain, and we'll go over to the expansion, but it, like all the paint in here, over 6 months, I would go and buy the Oops paint. And what Oops paint is, someone buys like a 5-gallon bucket of paint and goes, you know, I just don't like this color, so they return it. Well, then what Home Depot and Lowe's do is they go, well, make it some completely other color, and like these blues and greens and stuff that people don't really want to buy because they don't want to lose the sale on a good color. And I would wait, and I'd be like, ooh, blue or green, I'll buy it, because it was a whole 5-gallon bucket, and it was $25. Whereas like if you had it made to this color, they're like, oh yeah, that's $180. And I was like, I can't afford $180 in paint. And so you'll start seeing like, well, why is this different than this one? Like, well, I got a different color of paint, that's why.
Well, it's like, it's so inspiring because even I took that and it was like, well, so we've got like a small amount of money. We've got like probably 80 grand. We've got to build a store. It's got to be big. You know, there's a few things you know the cost that they're going to be, but there's all the hidden costs. So it's like, how can I firstly try and get none of those hidden costs, but then what can I do to save money? So like even across the road from me at the fish store, there's like a used furniture place. Yeah. I bought like a bookcase and I turned that into my checkout.
That's what we did out here.
Pushed it onto a wall and screwed it in.
Yeah, these power strips.
Yeah.
Every day on the way into the store, I'd stop and use a coupon to buy one because it was 20% off. They were only $20, but 20% off. You're like, hey, I'm saving $4. That's like crazy. That's. And so, but it was limit one. Yeah. Like it was one item. So every day, stop, one of these please. And then I would also, they had another coupon they let you use to get a free tape measure. So I'd get like the free tape measure. And there are, when you actually look, you're just like, oh, there's a lot of these power strips like throughout the entire store. And there's a method to the madness. If it's vertical, it handles lights. If it's horizontal, it handles like filters and heaters, always on power. Yeah. But when you just, the numbers start getting out of control, where you're like, I think I need 40 power strips. And you're like, that's a lot of money at $20 a piece. Like that's $800.
What about like
I'll save how much?
Yeah, like bulkheads, it's like, they were like, I don't know, $10 each.
Yeah, I remember like each tank, I'd be like, okay, I bought the used tank. Sponge filter, if I buy them used, are like $5. The bulkhead's like $5. And then I'm like, okay, gravel and a light. And then you just go like, how many tanks can I afford? And now I love it because it's like, I just make bulkheads and I keep the price down because I remember of like, every time I wanted to build, I'd be like, how much was it for this? And so I try to hold the price down versus some of our competitors because there's not that many people that make bulkheads because not that many bulkheads actually sell. But I try to keep the price manageable. And during COVID, we couldn't get bulkheads, and I was like, fine, we'll make our own. And we did. And they're just normal, so.
How much in today's money, like, because it was 10 years since you set this up?
Yeah, maybe 11 now, yeah.
Yeah, so how much in today's money do you reckon this would have cost to set up?
This side right here, I think
like,
it would
not
be...
the expansion.
Yeah, yeah. I think it would have cost me like $120,000.
Jeez.
And I spent like $50,000 originally. Well, so originally I had $50,000 in cash, and I had a mentor that was encouraging me, and they were a Finnish carpenter by trade. They did all the woodwork and everything here, and they did all of their work on a loan. And he said, like, you're either going to make it and you'll pay me back, or you'll file bankruptcy and you won't make it. And so I owed him, like, I don't know, I think it was like 50 or 60,000 by the time we were all done. And some of it was, like, I was buying these natural edge pieces. He had these in his garage.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, but they're worth this, like all this live edge, all this stuff. But I got it for free and I owed him. So I was like, well, that sounds great. Zero money today. And if I make it, I pay you. And if I don't, like, well, let's file bankruptcy, I guess.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that stuff was like that. You know, he carved the sign for me, which was very labor intensive, and it's like my favorite piece. And even before I started the store, I even knew my slogan was Enjoy Nature Daily. My whole goal was, how can I get people to like interact with their tanks like it's a slice of nature instead of like, it's an aquarium. Like, no, it's a slice of nature though. And so, yeah, so it cost me probably $100,000 just in labor / materials. And so like the other side, I know we're into it for, like, if you factor in the labor, probably more than that. And you know, like we put in a fish tank where it's like at the time, that $100,000 only built this wall, and that's pretty much it. Like all of this didn't exist yet. Like the checkout did, but all the tanks in here, all the metal, I had to open up because I ran out of money.
That's the same that happened to me.
We were literally, I was looking at the checkout, I'm like, I think I have $300 left, and that doesn't build anything new. Like, okay, and
do you remember that, Harlan? Like, we were like at my store, I tried to do as much as I could.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna run out of money. Like, I need to set up like the store, I need to just put fish in here and just start selling them. Harlan was like working for me like a couple weeks after I opened, and like we were painting tanks while this shop was closed. It was like, we just needed to find a way to keep money coming in.
So we opened like the middle of March, which was just kind of like 2 weeks after, because we had people beating on the door like, you're going to be a fish store, let us in. And I had been in the club, and so we had a little bit of...
And you worked at the shop before too.
Yeah, and so I had a little bit of momentum, not a lot, but you know, that first month we sold $10,000 worth of stuff, and you know, my logic is, like with dry goods and stuff, like, oh, if you made 10,000, hopefully you profited like 5,000, but you still had to minus like, oh, minus 1,000 for rent and power, but even then, like starting out, we're like, okay, there's 2,000. That $2,000 I can now build, like this will build one more rack, and then another month, okay, this will build this, and that's how we did it. We just took each time we got profit and put it back in, and so it went from where there'd be 2 bottles of Prime on the shelf of like, now we'll do 3. I think we can afford to like, let's get up to 3 on these things. And that line of logic, that it was hard because if you sold out of your Prime or something for the week, you're like, I'm not getting more until next week, and the minimum order is $400. Like, uh-oh, that's going to be hard. And so it was very nerve-wracking, and I wasn't paying myself anything, so my wife supported us for like the first 2 years basically, because I wasn't making enough at all, so there wasn't like paychecks. So it was just like, just put everything I have back in. I remember I heard the first batch of lights, and they had them in stock at the wholesaler, and the wholesaler was like, oh, actually we have 26. I'm like, yeah, but there's 43 tanks. I heard 43. And so even when we first opened, not every tank had a light. And I was like, oh, this is going downhill quick.
We didn't have lights in the back, remember that? And we were using flashlights to look in the tanks. And we're trying to breed all these fish, and we're like putting flashlights in and like couldn't see anything.
Yeah, it's just, and
it's a total like.
And you could like, oh yeah, buy LED lights. Like, well, those are $50 each. These lights were like $11 each.
It's like whatever you think your shop is going to be, it's going to cost like 3 times, 4 times more than that number, I feel like.
Yeah, and just things that blew my mind were like fasteners. Like the way we did this here, the bolt, the washers, and the nut, they're all galvanized, so they'll never rust. Like, we're here 10 years later, not rusting.
Yeah, they'll canoe.
But the hardware cost me $800. But I never factored that in when I'm like, I'm going to build a store. And I factored out every tank and everything, and I didn't think, yeah, fasteners and bolts, easy $800 in galvanized. At the time, I didn't even know I was supposed to be using galvanized so it will last forever. I was just like, I don't know, buy some bolts or something. Like, we'll screw it together. I don't know. So
you've also got like the quarantine area.
Yeah.
And this would have been probably... Can I open this?
Yeah.
This probably would have been, at the time, one of the things that set you apart from your competitors.
It was, and it was not this way. So when we built it the first time, we built it out of normal glass tanks and everything. It'll be a little bit louder in here from the dehumidifier. It keeps it hot.
Yeah.
But we built it out of glass tanks, and same rack, and just 20 highs on end, and but they don't fit these racks perfectly. And so I had this waste of space, and I have so little space. So eventually, like in year 2, we had racks, or we had these tanks made specifically for these racks, and the width fits a 10-inch net perfectly. So you just back to the front, all the fish coming out, and out they go. And so these were all custom designed by me and the builder. Like no one had ever done that before. And I remember we have the same problem on the other side, so I didn't learn my lesson. But we built all of them, we got them here, and then we go, oh, there's no way to hang the catch cup when you need to catch thing out of here. So they had to come in and route these in while they were in place. Because we didn't think about that. We're like, it would have to fit over that, and it wouldn't. So we had to cut these notches in. And so we set up the whole side over there, all acrylic. We didn't cut any of these in yet, so Dean and I are going to have to cut them in. Just like my house, I have those same tanks, but I don't need a catch cup all the time. Well, in a store you do, so it just slipped my mind, and it's a warehouse. We don't use catch cups. We use the same tanks. So I literally am going, we could have done all this before installing them, but now we have to come in and do it after the fact. So I didn't learn my lesson there, but the quarantine system did set us apart. It allowed us to charge a little bit more money, and I used it as a marketing tool. So the door we opened up was a clear door. I want people to see if things are thriving or dying, and if they're in quarantine. And right now we have 2 tanks that are sick because the lights are out. But in a normal fish store, that would be way more.
Yeah.
And so people are willing to travel further and pay more money for our expertise. And normally our sick fish aren't that terrible, which this will be like the worst example I've ever seen probably.
Let's have a look. A little bit of white spot, that's it.
Yeah, maybe like this guy, he's the runt, so he's losing his tail, but normally we're pretty good about keeping most disease out from the sales floor, and we turn the light out to make it real apparent, like these are not for sale. And so that helps set us apart, that we sell healthy fish. I just realized we have dwarf claroplecos that we were talking about earlier. $60 a piece, somewhere in there. And then we buy from local breeders when we can. And that any tag in the store that's got a blue tag means someone locally bred it. Yeah. And so we try to do that as much as we can. And there'll be 10 people going, no, you don't. I tried to sell you stuff you didn't buy it. Well, like 3.5 neon tetras doesn't do a lot. Because everything goes into quarantine. So it's like, I need 300. And then the meds and the employees to take care of them will make sense. So we like to buy in big quantities. It also has to be something we sell. Like a lot of times people will be like, I made all this fish you don't sell.
Yeah,
you like it? Like, no, we don't want that. Yeah. So we try, and we get breeders that will like, well, how would I just always make you gold rams? Like, that sounds great to us. And, that's how I met Dean. Dean, I knew him like of a mystical being, which he still is a mystical being, but he was in the club and he was like just a breeder, like a discus breeder that was like, oh, wow, that guy's really good. And once I opened the store, that's when the friendship started. He's like, hey, how about I sell you fish? And I was like, I'm open to this. And over time, we just got really close, and that's how we kind of started working together on lots of stuff. But he was real receptive to, like, how about if it sells, I pay you. If it doesn't sell, we don't, and we'll just price things to move quick. And so I remember, I think the first thing he ever brought me was like 100 platinum white Thai bettas.
He was saying this story to us too.
Which is like an insane amount of bettas to be selling as a small store. But I think we put $5 on the tank, and people would just like, I'll take 6. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So we actually did pretty good on that. It was still hard to sell like the last 20.
Yeah. He said you had them a year later.
Yeah, it was because there was only so many that people were buying, and then it kind of got to like, okay, like I've really flooded the market with these. But we took each thing that he would breed or I would breed, we'd trade, and I would try to buy, and I would try to go, I'll get you as much as I can, but we need to make sure it's affordable for the customer, and they're okay with it. And over time, we were able to do lots of deals, lots of fish, lots of adventures together. Now he helps build things, and he's in the videos and all of that. And so we built a much longer friendship with that. And I've got other good friendships that just kind of never go on camera, not because I'm hiding them, it's just like they don't really want to be on camera. They're just, so I developed some really long-term friends from running the fish store, just other true fish nerds like me. And like the guy that we would call him Jess the Giant, he would make all our coconuts. Yeah. And, because he worked at a grocery store, so I could buy them wholesale, and then he would dig out all the coconut. And I remember he'd be like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this coconut. Like, my family is choking out on coconut. No one wants more coconut, because I just need the shells. And he's like, but it's so wasteful, all this coconut. And
so what I want to do is maybe run through a few things here that I wish you had like in one video.
Okay.
And one of those things is like the little things in a shop that you think lots of local shops aren't doing.
Okay.
So like say someone's watching the video, right? We've talked about like how much we spent on shops or how much you spent and how like to set it up with the quarantine room, what set you apart and like how the struggle was. But like what, like I know the mini fridge, freezer, like having your frozen food.
The freezer being the most profitable thing in a fish store if you're doing it right per square foot.
Yeah.
Very important. And so you don't need a giant freezer. You just need it to be near the register. You need it to be well stocked, and you need to have good pricing. So, and when you get to see the expansion, you'll get to see the new upgraded version of this. But originally I started out, and Hikari did a deal where if you bought like $2,000 of their food or something like that, they would give you like a little mini fridge that would fit like on a counter.
Yeah.
And then I bought these Hikari things that would like help bring the food to the front. And when you really look at, most fish store owners are pet people and not business people.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but when you look at like, okay, well each one of these is like $6. And if every customer goes, well, I'd take one or two of those, that's like selling two $6 fish to every customer in the span of like, oh, that's equal to two 20-gallon tanks. That's going to outperform like all the other space in the store. And so making sure this was highlighted, and too often you see,
like a
well,
lift
that's how
fridge?
I started. I bought stores that went out of business, and I had a rusty freezer that I paid $20 for.
Is it the top-down looking one? Yeah,
exactly. But it didn't merchandise it at all, and I learned like how much more frozen food you sold just by making the switch. Like you can make signs, that doesn't do anything. When people go, like so often in a store, like, oh yeah, and I need frozen. Like it's because you don't want to get it early, you don't want it to defrost. It's kind of like, maybe I would move ice cream towards the register in a grocery store. Like, yeah, you don't want to get it too early, you don't want it to melt, but you're also like, dang it, we forgot to buy whatever, frozen. And so this was one thing that I thought most stores need to know, and it's worth money to invest money into. And on that same line of thinking, every cubic foot, not square foot, because when you rent, you're like, how many square feet is the place? Well, a fish store is cubic feet because we go 3 tanks high. Like I can sell something out of here as I can down there. It's not like traditional retail. And so you need to break down per tank, how much does it cost in a cubic foot? So at the time I was paying $1,000 per 1,000 square feet. It's actually $950.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, but it's actually like 10,000 cubic feet. Like it goes that high. And so you needed every tank like, well, can this, like how much money does this tank make me versus the next tank?
Yeah.
And you can start going like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to sell this fish anymore because we don't make enough money from it. So if you have a Faka puffer sitting here for 3 months before it sells, you actually lost money on rent and everything than if you just put some other common fish, like maybe these Congo tetras or something. And so I think that's what people don't think enough of is, can you go vertical? And some stores do this really well where they're hanging like driftwood from the ceiling and that kind of stuff because that's just free real estate. And so I think that's real important. And I try to maximize every square inch I could. You notice there's like not a lot of gaps. No. And I would measure and go, but can I fit more? Can I fit a CO2 tank between here and the wall? Can I, like even down here, like we can sell the gravel under these tanks.
That was smart.
And I put lights underneath to merchandise even the bottom 12 inches of like, yep, substrate can just lay down there, and there's stuff all around the checkout. Like, there's still like you could do a little bit more, but even up at the ceiling, it's like, hey, there's shirts and hats and all of that stuff. And so it was get as much as you can out of a little store, because so many people are like, I've got 10,000 square feet, and I go, how could you possibly afford to fill that? Like people don't realize that it's at least $1,000 a square foot to build out a place and stock it. And so when you have that much, it's like, often I'll walk in and I'll have like a warehouse. It's like, you're way understocked. Like it's a ghost town in here.
I remember like in another one of your lives, you're talking about people just like expanding for the sake of it. Like store owners would be like, oh, we're going to start the expansion. It's like, well, do you have a good reason to do that? Like you're not even like at the moment doing...
Yeah, I'm not going to call it a desperation move. It's a move that makes sense. We're doing well. When you're doing well, you should expand. And if you haven't run a big store, you don't know what you're getting into. I was lucky enough that I worked for another store and ran it for 5 years. And so that store had 300 aquariums. Here, I only have 100.
Yeah.
And so when I was working that store, and it was a 2-man crew, me and the owner, and we could never keep up on maintenance and all that, it was because we had to clean 10 tanks every day. You got 30 days in a month, and we have 300 tanks. And it seems like that should be doable until you get Saturdays and Sundays and you're busy open to close and no tanks got cleaned. So now all of a sudden it's like, well, I gotta make 13 tanks happen a day. And then there's like, but I don't work 7 days a week, I only work 5. And then the owner took a day off, and then someone's on vacation, and you start falling so far behind. And that's what I find, like right now it's Sunday night and there's a little bit of algae in my tanks, and I'm going, yeah, we gotta prevent this. And with more tanks, that just happens more and more. Like, I'm okay that we're starting to see some algae Sunday night and we got to the busy weekend, but like I have to have meetings with the staff where it's like, if this is Friday night or Saturday night, like this is prime time, we got to do a good job. And so the more tanks you add, the bigger you get, the more expensive it is, the more a flood will hurt, the more personnel you need, the more everything. And what I know from working a store, when you walk through the door, you're like, I'm here to get like 6 fish. If I have 1,000 different varieties, you still walk out the door with 6 fish, pretty much, maybe 7.
Yeah.
If I have 100 varieties, you walk out of the store with 6, maybe 7 fish. And so, being that all of these things are eating and pooping and breathing, and you got to take care of them, the more you have, the more effort it takes to sell those 6 fish now. Like, and yeah, you might have 1 out of 100 customers like, I didn't see anything I wanted, but they end up getting bogged down. And I see this a lot in smaller stores where they get too big and they lose like a key employee, or they get sick, or it's been the holidays, like whatever it's going to be, and they start falling behind. And like in my own fish room, I know I went to Germany for 2 weeks. It was 16 hours of just cleaning, just for my own fish room. And so, and that only has like 35 tanks. So now you go to 100 tanks, and it's like, wow, that's going to be a whole week of work if you got too far behind. And they get into a hole, in my opinion, they can never crawl out of when it comes to cleaning without spending extra time. And it's a very hard thing to do if you're already working 7 days a week or 6 days a week and go, well, I'll just start pulling 14-hour days and I'll stay late after we close to clean. And then the longer you're open, the more friends you have coming in. And so they just want to chat, and you're like, I need to clean though. I need to, like, honestly, the best thing I can do today would be close down the store and clean, as opposed to like, well, this customer wanted to talk a bunch and they spent $22. Which is great, but at the same time, you need them to spend $22 in 12 minutes, and then you spent 2 hours cleaning, and you got on top of it again. My store's 1,000 square feet. We do a little, well, like 1.2 to 1.4 million a year out of here. And so whenever I'm counseling another store, I go, well, how much are you doing? Because if you're not getting towards like 750,000 or more at 1,000 square feet, like you haven't optimized enough, and more is not always better. I find that, like restaurants, the thing that takes restaurants down is making your menu bigger and wider.
Yeah.
Because you have more spoilage. For some reason, they're not ordering that this week. And the more you pare it down, the more profitable they become.
I think too, like people get like analysis paralysis, like where it's like, when I go to a restaurant, I love when they got like 3 things. Like, you know, like the finest restaurants, and they got like 2 entrees.
You basically believe in like, whatever you're making is going to be so good, I just choose one of these 3 things. And that's what I'm here for.
It's not like a better experience. It's just like, oh, that was an easy decision.
And again, with 1,000 options, you don't order 2 meals. You still order 1. I came in, I'm here to order 1 meal for myself. And like, but I give you 1,000 options. Are you sure you don't want 3 meals? Like, nope, just 1.
It's like, you're better here, like, because obviously your goal is like planted community aquariums. You are better to niche down in that, which is already like a massive thing. And rather than like go, okay, we're going to have African cichlids, we're going to have like a huge goldfish section.
And we tried all those throughout the years, because I own shelldwellers.com and just other opportunities that presented itself, and it became too hard to train the staff. Too often when you go to a store, maybe they're doing African cichlids, they're doing planted tanks, they're doing Central and South American cichlids, and they're doing saltwater. And you just go like, hey, can you tell me more about this? And they go, actually, I'm kind of the saltwater guy. The guy over there that's helping those customers knows about this. And that's what I never want in my store. I want everybody to know, these are the fish we sell, this is what they do well with, this is how you help them, and not be like, well, it's actually this person that might know. And so one of the best things I think I lucked out on, because I hadn't seen it done, and I think I got lucky, I don't think I was a genius, was I wanted everything to be able to live its life out in a 20-gallon tank. Originally when I started the store, I was only going to sell fish, medicine, and heaters. Those were the only things that I thought I could beat Amazon on, because if you want a filter, order on Amazon, I'll be here in 2 days, and it's cheaper. But if your heater broke, you had to get one of those right away. If you needed meds, you needed those sooner rather than later, and fish didn't ship very well off Amazon. And so that was my focus, and I thought, all right, I want everything to be able to live together, basically. And I found that, okay, people know goldfish live with goldfish, so that's okay, I can have some goldfish, but they wouldn't know that this big African cichlid would just eat this tetra. Like, they would just be like, yeah, put the things together. And so I knew from running the other store of like everything in here for the most part basically has to live together, and we get away from that every once in a while where it's like, yeah, we do have a little bit of this, but we try to make it so that when a family comes in and they go, hey, my kid, pick out what you want, and they just like, I want this thing, and this thing, that we can say yes instead of like, well, if you're going down African cichlids or if you're going down goldfish.
I have the same issue. Like I tried to do that, and now, like just from doing this trip as well, like I've learnt a lot from it. Like we're really gonna have to narrow down at the shop. Like here, I think the lovely thing is that because you've got limited tanks, like you've got the luxury of you've actually made community tanks that you're selling out of.
Yeah.
Where like I feel like with my store, I'm gonna have to like categorize maybe a little bit better, like where I can do that. But
we try to have every tank have 3 types of fish: a bottom dweller, a mid dweller, and a top dweller.
Okay.
Or bottom, mid, and specialty. So it could be like a pleco or killifish, but you get too many more than 3 and people get lost of like, and they'll be like, I'm looking for this in here, and they're like, is this the thing? They'll be pointing to like a $200 pleco, and they're like, is this the neon tetra? Like,
yeah.
Nope, that's not that.
Yeah.
That guy's $200.
I think too, like, because it's all on the one wall, it actually makes it really easy.
Yeah, so the layout is kind of most of the community, and then over here you get kind of nano in these middle and bottom tanks, and then a little bit more oddball, like some eels and you know, like the Congo tetras get bigger, and so they can't just go with anything, so they get a little bit weird. And then we try to make processes for everything. So like the blue tags, for instance, locally bred. White tags, we've ordered them in. When it comes to plants, we do easy, intermediate, and difficult care levels. And so all the tags are based on the color of how difficult they would be. And so that way, even if you're a brand new employee and you've never grown a certain plant, you can be like, ooh, that thing's red. Like, yeah. I know to tell them that's difficult to grow. And so it makes it easier. And once you spend the time with the customer, right? And you go, yeah, your tank with the light you bought, basically any with a green tag you can do. Yeah. And now they're not going, because what we'd see is like, can I do this one? Can I do this one? Can I do this one? And if you go, anyone with a green tag, they go, oh, okay, any on this row? And then like, oh, none of those. Okay, a few down here maybe. And so because we would get so busy, and you also didn't want like, we want all our customers or all our employees to be on the same page. And so if I say this is a hard to grow plant, and then you tell someone it's a medium to grow plant, well, like when I bought it, he said it was medium, and now I'm here, you're telling me it's hard, no wonder it died. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, let's all, and like my staff we get quizzed on the plants. And so you need to be able to identify them just from what they are. You need to know what would we normally recommend them. And it makes it easier to keep everybody on the same page. Same with meds. One person might say you treat that with salt. The next person says use Icex. The next person says I use Riddick. And so it's like, well, we only recommend what we use. We use salt, and we use Icex. If you're recommending anything else, you're confusing our customers.
It's like one common idea.
Because it's really bad when things are going wrong and they come in and that employee has a day off. They told me to do this. You can instantly go, they would have never told you to do that. We don't recommend that. That is not something we recommend. Like, we don't recommend turning up the temperature. And like I read it online. I go, yeah. And you turned up the temperature on goldfish. You're stressing them out more than you're doing good, because the internet didn't know you were treating ick on goldfish. We would say, how about use an insane amount of salt because they're super tolerant and not raise the temperature? And so we just know that, yep, we don't tell them to raise temperature. We use these 2 methods, either salt or Icex. And that way when they show up on their day off, they're not going, well, the other person told me this. And we can just know, like, no, they didn't. We know they didn't. Like, that is not what happened, because you'd see it happen all the time. You'd ask them, like, did you tell them this? They'd be like, no, I didn't. I'm like, okay, well, we refunded them anyway because we thought you did. And so
I was going to say too, I love how neat you keep the plants.
Yeah, so substrate's got to be
trays.
vacuumed all the time if you
Yeah.
keep substrate. And so I made these plant racks, as I called them, and they're made out of acrylic, and they hold potted plants, and they just, one, I want to be able to take inventory. I want employees, like if they see there's some, they go, there's some. But now it's like, if there's not 5, you need to refill.
Yeah.
Or are we out? And like here, like I would bet if we go to the other side where we have more storage, we don't have more dwarf Sagittarius. It's Sunday night. We probably ran through most of it today, this weekend. And so now we took this system and we took it. Here's another little sign we made. I forgot about that one where it breaks down if they use CO2 and everything with the different colors. But we now make these commercial. We have them made. The first time we had a whole pallet of them made for our warehouse because we ship plants. So we took the same system, put it into a ton of tanks at the warehouse, and then we like this so much and so many stores like it, we actually make them in green now and we sell them to other stores. So you probably start seeing them in stores, like we got 130 stores basically, and there might be some on the other side, and like we don't really make any money off them, but they
It helps the stores.
It helps the customer, it helps the store. It just helps all around, and it doesn't cost us that much. Like, we're not losing money. So it's like, if we can help the hobby and the stores, like, yeah, we make money when they sell our other stuff, and so we don't need to make money off of everything. Some of it's like, well, we kind of just break even on this, because by the time you work with a manufacturer, you spend on the molds, it's like, I have to sell like 100,000 of these things. I've sold, I think, like, to date, we've sold 800. It's like, yeah, there's all, like, even we only use, like, well, that's 2 racks per tank. It's like, you're not even using that
Yeah, it's
many.
like
Our
4 or
warehouse uses
6,
tons.
yeah.
But an average store is like, yeah, I need like 8. And it's like, that's 100 stores worth, basically. So,
Crazy.
and to break even after the mold fees and shipping them into the country and everything, it's like, yeah, it's like 100,000 kind of breaks even. So long term, like year 11, oh yeah, it's sweet, sweet profit. But that's not the best business decision to make products to help your competitors, basically, because another local store is a competitor. But we think if we grow the hobby overall, our hope is that we'll just sell more and not like we send them there. Instead, it's like, well, there's more people got into the hobby, more people are successful, all that kind of stuff. So